In the mountains of East Tennessee, near the small town of Del Rio, part of the scenery looks much as it did in the early 1800s. Lewis Grigsby was born in Greene County, March 31, 1812. Rebecca Ann Bryan was born April 3, 1818. They met and were married while Lewis was in his early 20s. The couple had 7 children, and they were able to send their third child, John Bryan, later called J.B., to Duke University Medical School. Upon graduating, he returned to Del Rio to serve the mountain communities. J.B. married Rebecca Hurst, and they had 4 children. Their only son, John Lewis Grigsby, learned medicine at his father's side, and eventually he met and married Nova Melinda Jane Turner, called Novi by the mountain people. Together they had 10 children. Carrietta Grigsby was born May 19, 1897. Margaret was added to her name shortly after birth. She would often go with her father on his rounds, dreaming of becoming a nurse someday. She married Harrison Nichols, the son of Millard and Martha Nichols, on October 15, 1916. About 9 months later, Emily Laura Nichols was born. The young family soon traveled to Tom Creek, Virginia, where Harrison worked long hours in the coal mines. Etta worried about Harrison being killed in a cave-in, so a year later they returned to Del Rio. They had 4 children altogether. Emily, born June 30, 1917. Bessie June, later called June, born November 29, 1919. Jasper Lewis, called Jack, born April 11, 1923. And Margaret Verda Lula Bell, later called Bell, born May 2, 1929.
The way that she got started in the midwife profession, these people that lived up the road from her, this lady was pregnant and going into labor, and her brother had come down the hill looking for her father to take him up there, and he was gone on another baby case or somewhere, and so she had gone with him a few times and knew sort of how to do it. So he asked her, well, could you come do it? So she did.
Every time we'd see Aunt Etta with her little black bag, we knew somebody was getting a new baby. Being children, we figured that she carried that baby in that little black bag, but we couldn't figure out how she'd get that baby in that little black bag. But we knew somehow she did.
I did all the prenatal stuff with this doctor in Morristown, and then went up there probably a couple of weeks before my due date to stay with Mama. And when the time came to have Josh, my son, it was horrible. I had a really hard time with him. I remember when he was born, though, I saw his bright eyes, and it just totally made all the memory of the pain just disappear.
We were up there when Darryl was born.
I was 5 when Darryl was born.
Yeah, and we didn't hear anything. During the night we knew nothing until the next morning. And grandmother comes in there and gets us, and Mom's back in what grandmother called her birthing room. That's where where Mother had him at. That time it was just a little bedroom. So we went back there, and Sandy, here she goes climbing up on up over top of the baby, over to Mom, up there right up on Grandma's neck. Grandma said, here, honey, here, said, look here at your little brother. She said, I don't want it, can't you send it back? She just squalling.
We went into Granny's little delivery room a little after midnight to start the process, and after about 2 hours of contractions, Karen was pretty tired. She's basically exhausted, and so I had to move around, and I kept up with it, and we were both starting to panic. We felt like it was going on too long. Never had done this sort of thing before, but Granny was just constantly reassuring and calm and gave us complete confidence that everything was going to work out. We were totally relying on her. Well, finally at about 7:30 in the morning, this is an ordeal. It went on for about 7 hours. About 7:30 in the morning, Granny had Karen sit up on my lap. He had a big head, and Karen had a small delivery chamber, and so she just had me push on Matthew's butt, and basically I shoved him on out, and Granny caught him.
But what I remember after she started having the birthing room there at her house, would go up there, and there would be women sitting around waiting to have their babies, and some of them come 2 or 3 weeks early, you know.
And their families would be there
And
too.
they bring their families. And Mama, she's always tickled to have them. She'd take care of those little children, feed them, cook for them.
She wouldn't turn anybody away. She wasn't in for it for fame or fortune. She was in for it because she felt like it was what God put her here on this earth to do.
And she was also on the NBC Nightly News in October of 1985, and there was a big write-up in the paper about that. Tom Brokaw was the anchor, and at the end of that, he was just sitting there like, he just had such a peaceful look on his face.
Harrison always supported his wife, even when she was gone for days at a time. In a house filled with love, they raised their 4 children and welcomed several grandchildren into the world during their 67 years together. One of their greatest heartaches was losing Emily to complications from a brain aneurysm February 2, 1971. Etta would also lose her mother, Novi, after walking several miles a day to care for her for years in her home. She had broken her hip in a fall and was bedfast for 10 years before passing away in 1967. Etta also cared for her mother-in-law, Martha Cordelia Clements Nichols, before she passed away. Both women would live long enough to see 5 generations carry on their family names. The special relationship between Harrison and Etta seemed to only grow stronger as the years came and went. No one can know the words they shared during quiet conversations, but they left their family a loving legacy to be remembered, treasured, and shared.
When I was up there once, Grandma and Papa were in the living room, and I was in the kitchen, and I just come walking out just as Papa put his arm around her shoulder and kissed her on the cheek, you know. And I just grinned, you know, just grinned at him. He said, "Well, what's so funny about that?" He said, "Don't you know it mean your Mama?" He said, "We've had a little loving along." He said, "How do you think all them kids got here?"
Mother would can a lot of canned stuff, you know, they had a good garden. And she would give away so many cans of food. And Daddy would have to go out every year and buy new cans, because they wouldn't bring the cans back, you know.
They struggled and they survived. And I'm just so proud of where I came from. And to say that she's my grandmother.
This humanitarian gift that grandmother had, and the reason she felt like it was her calling, had to do with her belief, her faith in the Lord.
Granny Nichols touched thousands of lives throughout her almost 60 years of doctoring and delivering babies. She inspired many to become better people through her gentle and loving ways. When she passed away November 25, 1994, she was laid to rest beside Harrison on a hillside in the Jonestown Cemetery. Their gravesite has a breathtaking view of the mountains, including Round Mountain. At the very top of Round Mountain is an area called Max Patch. At 4,629 feet, it is just above the timberline. The Appalachian Trail runs along the crest of Max Patch, and the views from this vista seem to stretch all the way to heaven itself. The sun is just a little bit brighter up here. It's almost as if a tiny bit of heaven is peeking through the clouds, reminding us to follow Granny's example and take care of our fellow man.